Hello and welcome to the Outcomes Over Hours show. I'm Tina Patterson and I'm delighted to share with you the guest who I have today. I'm here with Ty Wall, who is the Chief Transformation and Digital Officer at Contact Energy in New Zealand. Ty has deep expertise in areas such as digital, customer experience and transformation, and he's partnered with many blue chip multinationals and government agencies around the world. And why I particularly wanted Ty to come and chat with me today, though, is that he's part of a leadership team at Contact Energy who are transforming the way they work, how they collaborate, and how they achieve their business goals. So Ty, welcome to the Outcomes Over Hours show.
Thanks, Tina. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to start off hearing a bit about your own leadership style and how it has evolved over time.
Oh, well, I've got a bit of a service design background, actually, and was a consultant for a long time. And so and growing up in the US, you tend to work very hard, very long hours, especially in that industry, and spend a lot of time face to face with people. So understanding customer problems, getting to the heart of why you're actually doing the things you're doing. And so that meant hosting workshops, very heavy service design oriented. And so it was very hands-on and sort of extended working periods. And that was how I got my start. And it's evolved over time. Part of that was a move to Europe and sort of the realization that perhaps work isn't everything. And an evolution through moving to New Zealand and times of COVID, and how it sort of forced a complete reset and a re-examination of the ways I've worked and the ways I've led organizations, being forcibly changed into where we are today, which is, I think, a nice, healthy sort of in between, where it's, yes, getting to the root of problems and understanding why we're doing things, but doing it in a way that also empowers people, gives them a nice, healthy environment, and helps get the best outcomes in a way that is much different than the way I started.
Yeah, I love that. And as you say, the outcomes have to be there. And I think that's something that I hear a lot of people say when they're mandating 5 days a week of, well, we need to make sure we're being productive. And that means being together in the office. But I guess from what you were saying there, that you've been able to find the balance of having your cake and eat it too. The outcomes have to be there, as well as focusing on well-being and other things. So, Ty, if you think about how you're leading now at Contact Energy, how does that show up where we're not necessarily in the office 5 days a week anymore? And there is that focus, as you say, on the outcomes as well as on well-being and other things that matter to employees.
So like a lot of organizations, I think we learned a lot during COVID. We had some extended lockdowns here in New Zealand, and it forced us to think differently about the way we work and also the way we acquire talent. And so the way we operated before lockdown was that everyone was in the office most days, though we do have a bit of a dispersed workforce around New Zealand. But now it is, as you say, almost purely focused on outcomes. We have a work from anywhere policy. We went through a process of downsizing our physical office footprint during lockdown periods. And so we've really stepped wholeheartedly into that process of empowering people to work where they want, when they want. And if they're hitting, which are oftentimes pretty optimistic KPIs and goals, it really doesn't matter to me as a leader or the broader organization where and when that work happens.
Yeah, wonderful. And so if you think about leaders today, what are the 2 to 3 skills that you've seen or you'd recommend that people really amplify so they can effectively lead their teams in the coming decades?
So I think more than ever, there needs to be a focus on behaviors. And so we need people to be empathetic. We need people to listen. We need people to be accepting of new ideas. And I think they need to live that every day. And so calling that out early, setting very clear parameters around the way we want to behave to get to that outcome is really important. And then I think as a leader, you really need to live it every day, and you need to show up and exhibit those behaviors, but also the other parts of having a more holistic view of work. And so one example, I became a father for a second time over the Christmas period. I, of
Congratulations.
course, thank you. I, of course, took my full family leave. I took everything off my plate, empowered my employees to keep going with the work while I was out, to show that that matters to me. And when they go through the similar experience, I want them to have the same one where they can check out, they can focus on their family and know that the strong team we've built up around them will be there when they get back. And then that all leads to sort of the culture of the organization. And I think the culture has always been very important, but now I think it's even more important. And understanding about who we are as an organization, about what our goals are, and how we all come together collectively to achieve those goals, and do it in a nice way that I'll say empower a lot in this conversation, but gives people the tools they need to get the job done in a way that makes them happy.
Yeah, I love that so much. And what's the best advice you've been given about working smarter? Because obviously to focus on the outcomes over those long hours, it needs a different way of thinking and a different way of working. So what's the best, most practical advice you've been given for working smarter?
Probably from my current boss, our CEO, when we were talking about actually my the upcoming birth, he mentioned that the best performance he'd had was the year he had triplets. He and his wife had triplets, and the feedback he got from his manager at the time was that he did really well because he only focused on the things that mattered, and he put aside the noise and he put aside the things that didn't. And so it sort of it did two things for me. One, it put me in a great position going into that family leave, so I felt comfortable knowing that I had the support of someone who'd been there before and knew what I was about to go through. But at the same time, it when coming back and going through that period of sleepless nights and a little bit of stress on the home front, that there is a lot of noise you can put aside. The important part is focusing on and working with the people who the talented people you brought in to do the actual work. And just really focusing and putting aside the noise. So I think for two reasons, that's probably been the best bit of advice I've received.
Oh, I love that. And you mentioned reducing the noise, and I actually use that phrase a lot in my Outcomes Over Hours program, because I agree with you. I think these days it's really easy to get very distracted and not focus on the things that matter. So what practical things do you do in your role to reduce the noise?
I think being very clear about where we want to end up is important. Sort of having unclear goals and lack of clarity about the desired outcome helps, right? Making sure everyone's pointed in the same direction. I think focusing on the people, so making sure, yes, the outcomes are important, but the primary focus needs to be the people doing the work, making sure they have the tools they need, the money they need, the connections they need, the space they need. And that's part of one of my two jobs, the transformation role, where it's making sure that we have the whole organization focused on the strategic imperatives, and therefore stopping the noise, taking the things that aren't contributing to the goal of the organization, and getting them out of the way so that we can focus on the few things that actually do matter.
Oh, I love that so much. And I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions. Are you up for
Okay.
that?
I am, yeah.
Fantastic. So what's the best purchase you've made for under around about $100 over the last few years?
Oh, I think it was well less than $100 actually, and it's probably going to sound silly in this context, but Icebreaker, a local New Zealand company, makes some amazing merino wool socks. And the best part about them is that they're guaranteed for life. So they're not the cheapest socks, but you only have to buy one pair. So every time your toe pokes through, you can take them down to the store and they'll give you a brand new pair. So they're excellent. I would highly
Oh,
recommend those.
I love that. I love that. We have someone here in Australia who's known as the Barefoot Investor, and what he talks about is go as premium as you can on the things that you use often, because if you put it at a per wear, you end up going, oh, actually, that's a really great purchase that I made. So I love that one. And what is the book that you have either gifted or recommended the most to other people?
Um, on the theme, probably Wonder Weeks. I don't know if any other parents out there have read the Wonder Weeks.
No.
my wife and I are parents of two young kids, and are obviously far away from our families. And Wonder Weeks is a great book written by a Dutch woman, I believe, and it talks about the development stages of children. So it gives you confidence that you're doing the right thing and helps explain why they're going through something. And it's all about the developmental stages of children, and it helps. It's helped us tremendously in the parenting process. So that one, I think, and I'm in the sort of age range where that's a popular one. But on a sort of a more pleasure reading side, probably the book Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, an author I adore and have read several times.
Fantastic. Well, given my kids are a bit older than yours, they're 15 and 13. So in the parenting books, I'm reading one called Adolescence by Michael Carr Gregg. So for people who've got older kids, that's one I can recommend as well. And what's the most fearless thing you've done in recent years?
Oh, move to New Zealand, I guess.
I was thinking, absolutely. That takes a lot of courage to move.
Yeah, we were based in Amsterdam before moving here, and were there for quite a while, and really enjoyed living there. And one day I was in a taxi in Munich and got a call from a lovely recruiter who wanted to talk about a company called Contact in New Zealand.
Amazing.
And yeah, we obviously didn't see COVID and the whole rolling series of lockdowns coming, but the 3.5 years we spent here have been fantastic, and it's a really nice place to call home.
Amazing. And finally, Ty, what does outcomes over hours mean to you?
Oh, to me, it's how we work in the modern age. If you want to win the war for talent, if you want to have the best possible outcomes and win in your respective industry, if you want that success to be sustainable, then it's not how you get there. It's what you actually deliver in the end.
Oh, gee, that is a perfect summary. Well, Ty Wall, thank you so much for being my guest today on the Outcomes Over Hours show.
Thank you for having me.